Hi again, I'm Randy Patterson. In my last video, I talked about the symptoms of a panic attack, which is a sudden, sharp elevation in the stress response causing a variety of physical and psychological changes. Panic attacks tend to last between 5 and 45 minutes. Some people feel like they last longer, but generally the anxiety fades from a peak within that time and only slowly returns the person to how they felt before the attack itself. Even 45 minutes is a fairly exaggerated length. Usually they're shorter. So it can be a long time from the beginning to completely feeling like your old self, but the attack itself is quite brief. I mentioned that we get many of these symptoms when something surprising or stressful happens in our outside environment, like if someone nearly hits us on the highway. But in these situations, the physical symptoms are no great mystery. We expect them. The situation alarms us. The symptoms don't. When someone comes to the clinic because of panic attacks, we naturally take a history of how the problem developed. And not always, but most often, a person describes their first attack as coming out of the blue for no apparent reason. Nothing horrible was happening right at that moment. They were just innocently driving along or sitting at work or lying in bed or in the middle of a restaurant, and wham, the attack starts. And if somebody's waving a gun in your face, fine. But for no reason at all, something's got to be wrong with your body. And when we ask carefully, it usually turns out that they're right. It did not happen at a moment of stress. But usually we discover that it did happen during what we might call a season of stress, a time when there was a lot of pressure or several big stressors within a few weeks or months. Maybe a family member had recently passed away, plus there was downsizing happening at work, plus a huge leak at home wrecked much of their stuff, plus they got dumped. All in the same part of 1 year. But none of them were happening at 2:35 on a Tuesday afternoon. They were just walking to the grocery store and it happened. Now, in my experience, we never do find out why it happened at that moment. But when we look at the person's life, there's really no huge mystery why it happened that month. There was a lot going on. So that first attack feels like a big shock, and they've never had one before. So what the hell was that? A heart attack? A stroke? Sign of a brain tumor, maybe? Sometimes they go to the emergency room. Sometimes by the time they think of that, the worst is over. But still, what was that? And is it going to happen again? Well, that thought, is it going to happen again, is yet another straw on the camel's back. They were already stressed out enough to have one of these spontaneous panic attacks. And now we just added another source of stress. And maybe they used to think, wow, a lot's been going on, but at least I can rely on my body. And then their body does this weird thing to them. And sometimes that's it. Last one you have. But sometimes it goes further. They get just a tiny bit more watchful of their body and stuff that's going on with it. They become more vigilant for the early signs of another attack. And if you look more closely, you notice more of those early signs. And then you tense up a little bit more. What's going on? And this makes another attack a bit more likely. So a second attack sometimes happens a week or 2 weeks or a month later. And now you think, that wasn't just some weird thing that's going to happen once in my life. Here's another one. And I live all my life and I never have that feeling, then I have two a month apart. So what's going on here? So they become even more watchful, and because they're worried, their baseline level of stress is higher. And we know that panic attacks are more likely the higher that baseline is. So the person might have a few more attacks. And by now they've noticed, hey, I had one of those in the grocery store, or while driving, or in the photocopy room at work, or sitting in the stands at a hockey game. So maybe those are dangerous places for me. Maybe if I avoid those places, I won't have as many attacks. So they begin altering their life to avoid panic attacks. And when we go out of our way to avoid the things that make us anxious, our anxiety tends to get worse. Now, eventually, we're forced to go to a grocery store, but now we're really afraid of it, partly because we once had a panic attack there, but mostly because we've been avoiding grocery stores. And a little part of our mind has been thinking, wow, he's been spending a lot of energy not going to grocery stores. They must be really dangerous. So maybe we have another attack there and we go, aha, I can't go to grocery stores anymore. And our life starts shrinking inward, bit by bit. Now, there's another way that this works. These panic attacks are wretched. You feel really lousy. Sometimes it's obvious you're having one, or it feels like it, even if that's not the case. And you might wonder if you're about to die. Do you really want this to happen in the middle of a shopping mall, or on a plane, or hiking in the wilderness? How would you get help? What if you needed to go to the emergency room? What if you couldn't handle it and it was just really, really embarrassing? So maybe you should avoid places where it would be hard to get help, or places where there are lots of people who might see you. And here again, it starts building up. This is where panic disorder begins to add a second problem, which is agoraphobia, the fear of going to a place where it might be difficult to get help, or where an attack might be more likely. And you can see the problem. The very things that you're doing to prevent future attacks, like avoiding grocery stores, are exactly the things that are making more attacks more likely. In fact, if you didn't do anything to prevent panic attacks, you'd be better off. That's a general problem with the anxiety disorders. Early career clinicians often wonder, how on earth did this problem get as bad as it is for this person? And the answer is that the person was trying to make themselves feel better. The attempt to resolve the problem is what fed the problem. And it grew from a cute little lizard to a fire-breathing dragon. This is a paradox with many psychological issues. The more we try to resolve them using what seems like a perfectly logical strategy, the worse they get. There's another bit of this. People can't avoid everything. So they adopt strategies to make themselves feel a bit more secure. These are called safety behaviors. I'll give you a few examples. Some people have received a prescription for anti-anxiety medication, which is really not a long-term solution, but in the short term, sometimes it can be okay. So what they do is they keep the pill bottle with them at all times. Some people feel like their mouth goes dry during an attack, which is really a fairly normal symptom of stress. So they always want a water bottle with them, or a packet of cough candies. Some people worry that they'll need help, so they always have their cell phone with them. Some think that they might need to go to the emergency room, so they map out exactly where all the emergency rooms are wherever they go. Some of them just want a washroom to escape to. So they map out all the public washrooms. And then there's the biggest safety behavior of them all. You can only go out if you have an actual safe person with you, like your spouse or a trusted friend, or you need to establish that they're ready for your call anytime if you feel panicky. All of these things are designed to help you feel better, but all of them are types of avoidance. Avoidance of being alone, or of uncertainty, or of having a dry mouth, or of anxiety itself. And avoidance feeds anxiety. The more you have your bag of safety stuff with you, the more you feel you need it. And if you're in a situation where you can't have all of that stuff, it feels even more dangerous to you. The bag can also get heavier and heavier. I need a novel to distract me. I need my headphones. I need my herbal remedy. I need gum. And even if you're fully equipped, there's still that nagging feeling that maybe it just won't be enough, So the safety behaviors actually tend to make panic worse and the attacks more frequent overall. Okay, so all of that sounds pretty wretched, and maybe I've given you a feel for the things that can make a panic attack spiral into something much bigger. Maybe it even feels inevitable, like a sort of guaranteed doom. But it isn't inevitable. Panic is one of the most readily treated problems in all of mental health. It's not something you can get rid of with a snap of the fingers, but it's very treatable. And in the next 2 videos, we'll discuss what the treatment looks like. Thanks for watching. If you like videos like this, press subscribe below. And to get my books, check out bookstores, not surprisingly, or online booksellers. See you again.